In this tutorial we will have a look how we can move left and right, okay, and we can also jump. But when we are grounded, when we are standing on the ground, at that moment we can jump. We cannot jump on the air, as you can see, okay. And this source file and source code will be available on my Patreon, okay. You can take my membership with just $3 a month, and you can have multiple projects, files and codes, source files, apk, abb bundles, anything like that, okay. Also will have besides this, okay. So you can join up my Patreon, you can take membership with just less than $5 a month, okay. And then you will have all of the access of file, source code, anything like that, okay. So without furthering delay, let's dive into this today's topic. We will move our game object side by side, and we will have how we can jump, okay. So let's get into this. If I hit this play button in the top, okay, uh, try to move our player game object side by side, we cannot able to move that. Let me show that to you. And as you can see, I am holding down a D key. We not moving our player character side by side, okay. So we need to do that. So let's go over to script. So let's go over to script. Over there, what we will do, we will gather some information, okay. So we will type input dot get axis, okay, get axis. And over here we have to pass the axis name. So the axis will be horizontal or side by side, basically this, okay. So if I select this player and I have to focus on it, this will be side by side, like this, okay, side by side. So I'm gonna set back to this 0. So in brackets, in quotation, we have to pass the axis name, which is horizontal, okay. And close that off with semicolon. And this right over here, it can be -1, 1, or 1 and 0, okay, depending upon what key you holding down. Let's suppose you holding down a key. So this input dot get access horizontal function will give us a key, so -1. And instead of, if you press down D key, so this will give us 1. And if you don't press down any or both of them, A or D key, so this function right over here will give us 0, okay. So whatever we will get, we're gonna store that into a variable. So let's go to top of our class, okay. Let's go to top of, let's make a public float. Let's call this one x movement, or movement, let's call it movement, okay. And close that off with semicolon. And let's set whatever we get, let's store into this movement variable. Movement equal to input dot get axis horizontal, okay. So this movement can be -1, +1, or 0, depending upon what key we holding down. If we holding down a key, so this over right over here will be -1. And if we hold down D key, so this right over here will be +1, okay. And if we don't hold down both of those keys, so it will be 0. So what we want to do now, if we move to Unity and play around with x-axis of this player. Oh, okay. Firstly, go to transform that position and play around with x-axis. As you can see, we indeed moving left and right, okay. So basically what we need to replace this x with that movement. And we know that movement can be -1, +1, or 0, depending upon which key we holding down, okay. If we holding down -1, so this will be -1, okay. So it will go to left direction. If we put right over here 1, okay, it will go to the right side, side, means side by side, okay. So that's the get. So I'm gonna set back 0. Let's go to script one more time. And what we need, firstly we need to go to transform, then position, okay. What are we doing right over here? Let me explain, okay. Transform position over here means this transform, then we moving over to this position. and we will add top of that plus equal, okay, new vector 3. And we know that vector 3 has x axis, y axis, and the z axis. Okay, so why we said equal to vector 3? Because this position also in a vector 3. As you can see, it has x axis, y axis, and the z axis. So that's why we need to set a new vector 3. Okay, and in the y axis we don't want to move, which is up. Okay, which is up, and in the z axis also we don't want. So let's put it 0 f. Okay, if we hold down a or d key, we should not move up, which will be the jump one. If we hold down a or d key, we will check for that one another key. Okay, and so we only just want to replace this x, okay, x with our movement. And this movement can be -1, +1, or 0 depending upon what key we holding down. So we adding, basically we adding to this transform, then going over to this position and replacing this x with movement. And we know that movement can be -1, +1, or 0 depending upon what key we holding down. Okay, and what we need to do right over here, we also need to multiply this time dot delta time to make frame rate independence. Okay, so make sure you multiply that with time dot delta time. Okay, and control s for saving it. Let's move to unity now. We should able to see this x right over here will be -1 if we hold down a key, and instead if we hold down d key it will be +1. So this player game object go to the positive side. Okay, side by side you can say. So let's hit this play button in the top and check it what really happening. FT. So as you can see, moving left and right, but the problem is that it's uh, we moving so slowly. Okay, what we need to multiply, okay, multiply this whole movement with some kind of a speed. Okay, so we can adjust it in the inspector. Okay, so let's do that. So let's make a public float. Let's call it player movement, or sorry, let's call it speed instead. And by default I'm gonna set it to 5f. Okay, and let's multiply this whole thing with 5f, or sorry, this speed. And we know speed is 5, so 5, this over here can be -1, +1, or 0. Okay, let's suppose this one is right over here is 1. So 5, this speed is 5, so 5 into 1 will be 5. So every single frame we will move to the left and right 5 unit of speed. Okay, so control s on your keyboard to save your code. And now let's move to unity, and we should able to see that gonna happen right away. We will move left and right by 5 amount of speed. Okay, so as you can see, movement, this can be -1, +1, or 0. Let's hit this play button. We should hope that we will move faster left and right. Okay, left and right, we should hope that. uh, as you can see, we moving little bit faster left and right. Okay, as you can see. So let me show you one more time. Let's hit this play button in the top, and let's hit this play button. As you can see, okay, we moving, but the problem is that our player game object little bit shaking. Okay, so we did some mistake. Let's instead of, let's use a fixed delta time. Okay, so let's go over to down and let's use this fixed delta time. Sorry, not fixed delta time, it's called fixed update. Okay, let's move this line of code, control x for cut and control v for paste. Basically fixed update right over here, it's called in a fixed frames. Okay, in once again it the frame rate will be fixed even if you are using a pretty much slow, fast computer. This update runs, it can be in 1 second, 60 frame in the in the second time. This update function can run 61 frame, or something like 50, 60, 61. So this update don't run in a fixed frames, but this right over here fixed update runs fixed frame. Okay, in 1 second 60, even the next time it will run 60 frames in 1 second. Okay, so that's why. So control S on your keyboard to save your code. Let's move to now. We should hope that this junky movement will gonna go. Okay, go out. Let me show that to you. Let's hit this play button in the top. Let me show that to you guys. As you can see, the junky movement has gone. Okay, so basically you need to use that if basically that you can say a fixed update, you need to follow your camera. Okay, we just move whole line of code of following our moving our camera, not follow, basically moving to the forward direction. We just put a whole line of code into that fixed update, and we know fixed update calls in fixed frame rate. The frame rate will be constant. Okay, but this update function frames don't have constant, okay, constant value. It can run 61, 62. It depends, totally depends. Okay, so that's the catch. And one thing we have to will have left to do is that making our jump. When we press down space key, this player should jump. Okay, so let's go to script, and we will move to update function. And let's firstly create a jump function. Okay, so let's go to bottom. Let's create a void. Okay, void uh, void, let's call it jump. Make first bracket and some curly brackets. Okay, curly brackets. So what we need this player rigid body reference. Okay, rigid body reference, then we can jump. So let's go to script. Let's go to top of our class. Let's make a public rigid body. Okay, rigid body, let's call it RB. And RB, and close that off with semicolon. Let's go to bottom now, and make sure you drag the reference when you go to Unity. Okay, we will move RB dot, sorry, we will go to rigid body, then dot add force. We will add, so we want to jump in the y-axis. Okay, y-axis, as you can see, if we just play around with y-axis, we can see player is moving up. Okay, basically in the y-axis we want to jump when the player presses space key. Okay, so rb dot add force, so that will be new vector 3, sorry, vector 2, vector 2. So vector 2, we do know that it has x-axis and y-axis. So in the y-axis we want to jump. Okay, so let's make a jump variable. So let's go to top, and let's make a public floor. Let's call it jump height. Okay, jump height, and by default I'm gonna give 10f or 10 unit. And let's go to bottom now. Let's replace this y with our jump height, and jump height is 10, so we will move in the y-axis 10 unit. Okay, in the x-axis we don't want to jump, so we're gonna put 0f, and this is a force, so that's why you have to use or you can use that as well. You can use a vector 3, something like that. Then you just have to include the z-axis. We will also put in the z-axis 0f. Basically we don't want to move in the or jump in the z-axis as well. Okay, and this is a force, so that's why we have to include force mode 2d dot impulse. Okay, and close that up with semicolon. Control S to save your code. But we need to call this function. But when we should call this, or when we should jump, when the player presses a space key. Okay, so let's go to update function, and over here which will check if input, okay, input dot get key, and into brackets we have to pass the key code. So we will pass key code dot space, okay, and make some curly brackets, and close, so curly bracket. So what we doing right over here, we checking if input dot get key code dot space, basically if the player pressing is a space key on our keyboard, as you can see, if input dot get key and the key code is space, if the player presses space key on our keyboard, then what we want, we will call this jump function. And we do know what jump function is doing, it's just adding in the y-axis some units, so player will jump. Okay, so let's call this right over here jump, okay, and close that up with semicolon, control jump, makes first bracket, and then close that up with semicolon, control s to save your code. And let's move to Unity now, and make sure you drag the reference out here. As you can see, RB it says none, so what we need to select this player rigid body and need to drag it in that field. Okay. Oh, sorry, I really messed that up. It's not rigid body 2D. It should be rigid body. Okay, I'm really sorry for that. Force mode. So we have to pass force mode dot impulse. Okay, so over here, this should be force mode dot impulse. Sorry, that's not a rigid body, this is a 3D game, so that's why we have to use rigid body, not rigid body 2D. Rigid body 2D is for 2D games. Okay, so control S one more time, and let's go to Unity now. As you can see, RB it says none, so let's select this rigid body and drag it up there. Now we have the reference of player rigid body. Let's hit this play button, and we should hope that we will jump in the y-axis now if the player press down space key. Okay, so as you can see, we jumping, but we jumping so much high. Okay, so what we will do now, I'm gonna take my camera a little bit farther away, a little bit up, and I'm gonna go to rotation of main camera and little, sorry, not basically in the x-axis. Okay, x-axis, something like this. Okay, it's fine. Let's hit this play button one more time. We should able to see this player will jump in the y-axis so much high. We need to fix that. Okay, we need to fix that, as you can see. So I'm gonna so what we want, let's make the jump height a little bit small, so something like 2. Let's hit this play button in the top one more time, and let's see, let's see. Okay, but we can jump in the air also, that is the problem. Okay, as you can see, we can jump in the air. So we only want to jump if the player is on ground. Okay, if the player is touches the ground or on the ground, okay, in that time we want to jump. We don't want to jump when we are on the air. Okay, we are on the air, we don't want to jump, so we need to fix that. So what we will do now, basically we will create a sphere underneath our this player game object. Okay, and if a small sphere, and if that sphere collide with this ground, then at that moment we will jump, and if the sphere is not colliding with this ground, then we will not jump. Okay, basically we need to create a invisible sphere right bottom of our player game object. Okay, to create that, let's create a point in the bottom. So right click on the player game object, then create empty game object. Let's drag this game object bottom of our player game object. Okay, so I'm gonna name this game object checkpoint, something like that. Okay, checkpoint. Let's drag in the bottom, sorry, so this will be -1, I guess. Okay, so -1, and you can select an icon in the inspector as well. So I'm gonna select this yellow one. Okay, so from this point we will create a small sphere, and we will check if that sphere colliding with the ground, then we will jump, and if that sphere is not colliding with our ground, basically this ground, then we will not jump. Okay, so that's the case. So let's go to script now. To create a sphere, let's go to update function. Let's go to top of our update function, and to create the sphere we have to use this physics dot check sphere. Okay, check sphere, and this argument as a first parameter, it will take the point from where we want to create the sphere, and the second argument, it will take the a radius of that sphere, so you need to specify, and the third argument, it will take the layer. Okay, so let's make a comment for now. Okay, let's make a comment for now. Let's go to unity first. Okay, unity first, and select this ground. Select this ground basically. Okay, select this ground, go over to inspector, in the top right you can see layer, it says default, so click on that, click on add layer, and name what you want to. So I'm gonna name it ground layer. Okay, and let's go to this ground game object one more time, and let's assign go to inspector once again, and layer, it says default, let's choose ground. Now we assign it this red ground as a ground layer. Okay, so we need that. Okay, so let's go to script one more time, let's go to top of our class, and first thing we need, let's create a public transform, means transform in position, rotation, and scale, and we will call checkpoint. Basically we need that checkpoint so we can create the sphere from that point. Okay, so let's create a checkpoint variable, checkpoint, and the second thing we need, let's also create a public float radius, let's call it check radius. Okay, check radius, and by default I'm gonna give something like zero point 0.5 if, or close that off with semicolon, and the third argument, it will take layer mask, basically which layer you want to target. As you can as you seen, we assigned it our ground game object as a ground layer. Okay, so we only want to target that ground game object layer. So as a third argument, let's select, make it public, that will be layer mask, basically which layer we want to target, let's call it layer mask. Okay, and close that up with semicolon, control S to save your code, and let's move to unity, let's assign those variable first. Okay, let's move to player game object, we need to assign those variable, then we can check for. Okay, so let's select this player game object, as you can see checkpoint says none, so let's select this checkpoint and drag it out there. Okay, and if to focus on it, if to focus on it, okay, sorry, speed, I'm gonna make it 2. Let's, and layer marks, it says nothing. Okay, so what we need right over here, so I'm gonna choose the ground, and we know we assigned this ground as a ground layer, so this sphere will only check for that ground game object, and it will check for nothing. Okay, besides basically it will check only for our ground layer or the ground game object where we standing. Okay, so we chosen the layer mask or ground. So let's go to class now. Okay, let's go to script, and let's remove these two slashes we assign it. So let's pass right over here checkpoint dot position. Okay, and the third argument, let's pass check radius, and layer mask, let's pass layer mask, and we know as a layer mask we have chosen that ground, so this function will only check for that ground. Okay, and close that off with semicolon. So this function will create a sphere bottom of this, basically from this checkpoint position with check radius. Okay, and this function can be true or false if this sphere is really colliding with that ground. Okay, basically this ground, then this right over here, this function gonna give us a true value, else this will give us a false value. So let's store the result, if it's true or not, let's store it into a bool parameter which can be true or false. Okay, so let's do it. So bool, that will be bool, let's call it uh, let's call it uh, call info. Okay, let's call it call info, call call info, basically collision info, let's set equal to this. So this call info can be true or false depending upon if the sphere is really colliding with that ground or not. If it's colliding, then this call info will be true, okay, else this call info will be false, okay. So that's the catch. So control S on your keyboard, okay, control S on your keyboard. Before that, as you can see, if input dot get space, okay, keycode dot space basically means we pressing down space key. At the same time, we will check if we pressing down space key and same time player is standing on the ground, basically this call info will be true, basically that a Shakespeare gonna collide with that ground. Okay, so we will check if second we will check if call info is true. Basically, if we press down space key at the same time, call info is true, basically that sphere is really colliding with that ground, okay. So that means we will jump, and when we are on the air, that Shakespeare or that sphere will not collide with the ground. So this right over here will be false, and in this if condition both of should be true. If we pressing down space key at the same time is call info is true, then we will jump, else we will not. So if we are on the air, we do know that that sphere not gonna collide with that ground. So that's why this right over here will be false. So both of these conditions should be true, then we will able to jump, else we will not. So the else condition, this and end condition checks both of these conditions should be true. If any of them get false, then this jump function will not call out, and we know if jump function don't call, we will not able to jump in, okay. So that's the catch. So control S on your keyboard to save your code. Now let's move to Unity, okay. We should able to see that if we are colliding with the ground, okay, basically that sphere we are not able to see the sphere, okay, that is the problem. So to see the sphere, what we need, let's go to script one more time. We have to use this on draw, okay, on draw gizmo selected function, and this function get draw the basically if you want to draw anything, it will draw or draw, okay. So what we want to draw, we want to draw, we have to use this gizmos dot draw draw where sphere, okay, draw where sphere, and it will take the position from where you want to draw. So let's pass our checkpoint dot position, and the second argument it will take the radius. So let's pass check radius and close that off with semicolon. But this will right over here will give us give us error if we don't assign the checkpoint, okay. So before we draw the circle, we need to check if checkpoint, okay, checkpoint is equals to null, basically we haven't assigned it, then we will type return, and we do know that after return whatever line of code you write, it will not be work, okay, it will not run or execute. So control S on your keyboard to save your code. Now let's move to Unity. We would able to see now that sphere top of our checkpoint. From that checkpoint the sphere will be drawn, okay. So as you can see, and we can adjust this check radius. So let's make it a little bit smaller. As you can see, let's make it 0.2, and now let's hit this play button in the top. When we are on the air not colliding with the ground, in that we will not able to jump even we press down space key, okay. So as you can see, if we are on the air, we not able to jump, okay. So I hope you get the idea. Let me show you one more time. When we are on the ground, at that moment we are able to jump because the sphere colliding with the ground. When we are on the air, it's not colliding, as you can see, okay. So I hope you get the idea how it's working, okay. And lastly, thanks for watching this video. Goodbye.